The moment Liam Bellamy walked into the Brighton Grill, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations hushed. Waiters stiffened. His presence, like his last name, carried weight, and not the kind earned by kindness. It was the weight of entitlement, of a man who had always known the world would bend for him. He wore a tailored navy suit that cost more than most people's rent, and his platinum watch glinted under the low chandelier lights as he gestured arrogantly toward the corner table. His entourage followed, 2 executives, 1 actress and his current fiancée, who had more diamonds on her wrist than thoughts in her head. And behind them, unnoticed as always, stood Harper Langston. She held a notepad in one hand, a tray balanced in the other, and wore the same worn apron she'd been issued 6 months ago. Liam didn't even glance at her when she approached. "We'll start with the '09 Bordeaux," he said, snapping his fingers. "Not that you'd know the difference." The table chuckled. Harper gave a tight smile and turned away. But inside, her pulse was steady, too steady for someone who'd just been insulted. Because she wasn't there to be respected. She was there to finish what her father started. What Liam didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that Harper wasn't just a waitress. She was the hidden daughter of Conrad Bellamy, the man who built the Bellamy empire and had died only days before. And she was holding on to something far more powerful than a tray. She had the original will. And in a matter of minutes she was going to drop it on the table like a grenade. But to understand how a waitress could hold the future of a billionaire family in her hand, we have to go back. Back to the day she received a letter that shattered everything she thought she knew about her past, and gave her the one thing the Bellamys feared most: acclaim. 2 months earlier, Harper had been closing the diner where she worked nights when a courier arrived. No name. No explanation. Just a sealed envelope with her name typed neatly on the front. Inside was a single page. "You are the daughter of Conrad Bellamy. You've been named in a private codicil to his will. Confidential instructions will follow." Harper had dropped the page twice before she finished reading it. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, shaking, staring at the paper as if it might burn through her fingers. She remembered the name from her childhood. Conrad Bellamy, the man her mother never spoke of. The man she'd once caught whispering on the phone in the middle of the night. The man she knew only through late child support checks that always arrived and signed. She thought it was over. That chapter closed before it began. But now everything had changed. The next instruction came days later from a lawyer named Margaret Fields. Clean-cut, discreet, terrifyingly efficient. Harper was told that Conrad had written a sealed codicil, one he refused to file formally, but insisted must be delivered by hand. By her. He wanted her to decide when. "When the time is right," Margaret said. "You'll know." So Harper waited. She didn't call the media. Didn't go to the family estate. Instead, she got a new job, at the Brighton Grill. The restaurant where the Bellamy family held their private lunches, business meetings, and birthday dinners. It wasn't hard to get hired. She was overqualified. Quiet. Invisible. And she paid attention. She memorized Liam's routine. Watched his temper. Studied the way he belittled the staff, flirted with married women, and made decisions with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Then, on that Thursday afternoon, the moment came. Liam insulted her, again. Loudly. Publicly. And Harper walked into the back, reached into her locker, and pulled out the sealed envelope. When she returned, she didn't flinch. She placed it carefully beside his wine glass, like a check at the end of a fine meal. "What's this?" he asked, not even looking at her. But when he finally did, and his eyes met hers for the first time, really met hers, something shifted in his expression. Confusion. Then suspicion. Then fear. He tore open the envelope. Read the first line. And stood up so fast the entire table jumped. "This is fake," he said, voice breaking. "It's forged." The room fell silent. Harper didn't move. "No," she said. "It's the truth." And for the first time in his life, Liam Bellamy didn't know what to say. Because right there, in black ink and Conrad Bellamy's unmistakable signature, was a statement that would change the future of the Bellamy legacy forever. "I, Conrad Bellamy, leave 51% of my estate to my daughter, Harper Langston, whom I regret not acknowledging in life, but wish to honor in death." Liam Bellamy's fingers twitched at the edge of the paper, his lips moving as he read the words again, like repetition might somehow change their meaning. The restaurant around him faded into a blur. The laughter at his table died. Even the servers paused in place, sensing something seismic had shifted. Harper stood her ground, hands folded behind her back like a soldier at ease. She didn't need to speak. The document was doing all the talking now. "This isn't possible," Liam muttered. "There's no way." His fiancée leaned over his shoulder, peering at the paper. "Liam, that's your dad's handwriting." "No, it's not." His voice cracked. "It's not. It's a scam." He turned toward Harper, his face red with disbelief and fury. "You think this is going to work? That you can show up in rags and steal everything my father built?" Harper looked him in the eye. "I'm not here to steal anything. I'm here to claim what was mine all along." Gasps scattered across the tables. The maitre d' stepped forward, trying to de-escalate. "Mr. Bellamy, perhaps you'd prefer to continue this conversation somewhere more private." But Liam didn't move. His voice rose, sharp and public. "This woman is a fraud. A liar. She's using my father's name." "Your father used mine first," Harper cut in, her voice calm, unwavering. "When he erased it." Liam's hand clenched the paper so tightly it crumpled. He turned away, storming out of the restaurant, his entourage trailing behind like a collapsing circus act. Harper exhaled. Not because it was over, but because the war had finally begun. She returned to the kitchen, her shift technically still in progress. But the manager, eyes wide with disbelief, told her to go. "Just go. We'll call you." She left through the back door into an alley that smelled like bleach and rain. Her hands were still shaking, but her mind was clear. Margaret Fields had warned her, "Once you deliver the codicil, everything will move fast. Be ready." She was. By the time Harper reached her apartment, her phone was already buzzing. Unlisted numbers. Unknown senders. News outlets. Gossip blogs. Even a voicemail from someone claiming to be a producer from a network morning show. She didn't respond. Instead, she called Margaret. "It's done," she said. There was a pause on the other end. Then, "You're going to need protection." "What kind of protection?" "The kind money can't buy. Because the Bellamys are about to make you look like the biggest liar New York has ever seen." And they wasted no time. The very next morning, headlines erupted. Waitress fakes will in attempt to hijack billionaire estate. Mystery woman claims to be Bellamy heiress. Family denies all. But Harper had expected this. She didn't flinch. She didn't hide. Instead, she went to see someone she hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Her mother. Rosa Langston lived in a small house in Queens, behind a row of faded gardenias and a white picket fence that had turned gray with time. She opened the door in silence, eyes already brimming with questions. "I didn't know if you'd come," Harper said softly. Rosa stepped aside. "I didn't know if I should." The living room hadn't changed. Same photos on the wall. Same sagging couch. But the tension inside it was electric. "Why didn't you tell me?" Harper asked. Rosa looked down. "Because I wanted you to grow up normal. Safe. Because I knew if his world touched you, it would devour you. He left me everything, Mom. Or tried to." Rosa shook her head slowly. "Then you need to be very, very careful." Harper sat down. "What do you know about Eloise Ratcliffe?" The name made Rosa stiffen. "She's the one who told him to disappear." "Disappear from you?" "From both of us." That was the first time Harper heard the story, how Eloise, then Conrad's legal advisor, had shown up one cold evening with a contract, a check, and a warning. Rosa had torn up the money. But Conrad had listened to Eloise. And vanished. Harper listened in silence. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the codicil. "He changed his mind, Mom. He was trying to make it right." But Rosa shook her head. "Maybe. But men like Conrad, they don't leave trails unless they want someone to follow." That sentence stuck in Harper's mind for days. Especially when she received a call from a blocked number that made the hairs on her arms stand up. The voice on the other end was calm, male, deliberate. "If you want to survive what's coming next, you'd better read the rest of the will." Harper sat alone on her living room floor, the envelope in her lap heavier than it had been the day before. The codicil had already detonated like a bomb in the Bellamy world, but the full will? She hadn't read past the first few paragraphs. She'd been too focused on the immediate strike, the moment of revelation. But now, she knew better. She peeled it open carefully, unfolding the thick parchment sheet by sheet. The first page confirmed what she already knew. She was named heir to 51% of the Bellamy estate, including controlling interest in Bellamy International. But there was more, so much more. On page 3, a section labeled Disclosures and Conditions caught her eye. The named heir must make full disclosure of any claim within 60 days of this document's delivery. Failure to do so may result in forfeiture, pending board appeal. Additional heirs may surface and, if proven legitimate, share in the estate as stipulated. Harper's hands tightened. Additional heirs. Had Conrad known something? Had he prepared for more fallout? She flipped to the final page, where a line of handwritten notes, different from the typed script, trailed into the margins. If anything happens to me before this is resolved, Harper must speak to Margaret and request access to file A37. Do not trust Eloise. Trust no one. She picked up the phone. Margaret answered on the first ring. I found a note, Harper said. He referenced a file. 37. You know it? Pause. Yes, Margaret said quietly. I was hoping you wouldn't need it. I need it. An hour later, Harper sat in Margaret's private office, behind 2 layers of security and a soundproof door. The lawyer placed a manila folder on the desk between them. A red label on the front read, Confidential, A37, Deviation Directive. Inside were documents that made Harper's stomach twist. Bank transfers. Legal memos. Private investigative reports. A trail of forged signatures. All connected to Liam Bellamy. The most damning piece? An email from Eloise Radcliffe to a Bellamy board member, dated 6 weeks before Conrad's death. The codicil must be intercepted. Conrad is deteriorating. If Harper Langston surfaces, she must be neutralized quickly. Liam's transition cannot be interrupted. Harper sat back, her pulse thunderous. Neutralized? She whispered. Margaret nodded grimly. That wasn't a metaphor. They hired a fixer. We don't know who yet, but someone's watching you. Harper's mind flashed to the black SUV. The man outside her building. The unanswered calls. The feeling that someone had been just a step behind her all week. They're going to try to discredit me. They already are, Margaret said. But this, she tapped the folder, this gives us leverage. We go public with it, and the board will have no choice but to act. But Harper wasn't ready. Not yet, she said. I want to know everything before I go nuclear. She left the office with the file clutched tightly, her instincts on fire. The deeper she dug, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about legacy. About control. And about a lie that went back farther than anyone knew. Harper returned home to find her apartment door slightly ajar. She froze. Inside nothing looked disturbed. No mess. No missing items. Except one thing. The codicil was gone. She rushed to her safe, empty. Every legal document she had brought back from Margaret's office earlier that week, vanished. Her heart pounded. She scanned the room again. Still nothing out of place, except a single white envelope on the kitchen counter. No name. No seal. Just a folded piece of paper inside, typed in bold. You were warned. Walk away. Harper didn't call the police. She knew better. This wasn't a burglary. It was a warning, and a sophisticated one. No fingerprints. No mess. No signs of forced entry. Whoever had taken the documents wanted her to know they could reach her, anytime, without making a sound. She took the envelope to Margaret the next morning. The lawyer examined it with gloved hands and a forensic light. No prints, she confirmed. This was done by professionals. Harper's voice was low. What happens if I walk away? Margaret looked up. You lose everything your father meant for you to have. Control. The truth. Your name. But you might keep your safety. That's not good enough. Margaret hesitated, then pulled open a drawer and slid over a new file. This is what they didn't find. I made a duplicate copy of file A37. Just in case. Harper's shoulders relaxed slightly. But there's something else, Margaret continued. Conrad didn't just leave you money and a name. He left you a path to destroy them if it came to that. Harper frowned. Destroy who? Margaret leaned forward. Liam. Eloise. And every executive who helped bury your existence. She opened the file and pointed to a spreadsheet. Offshore bank accounts. Anonymous transfers. Dates matching strategic moves in the Bellamy portfolio. right before major acquisitions, layoffs, and scandals. They were laundering money through dummy corporations, Margaret explained, and diverting shares into shadow trusts. If the SEC gets this. Harper didn't blink. Then Bellamy International collapses. Margaret's voice dropped. Exactly. But it only works if someone on the inside confirms it. Someone who saw it happen. That someone they discovered was Maya Knox. A name Harper had only seen on an internal audit buried in the file. Maya was a former compliance officer who had resigned 2 years earlier under mysterious circumstances. No statement. No lawsuit. Just a quiet exit and a non-disclosure agreement. One that had, according to a note in the file, expired 3 months ago. Harper tracked her down in Brooklyn. Maya answered the door in sweats, her hair in a loose bun, eyes wary. I know why you're here, she said before Harper even spoke. I need the truth, Harper replied. Maya hesitated, then stepped aside. Then come in. And brace yourself. Inside, Maya's apartment looked more like a war room. Stacks of binders. Labeled hard drives. Printouts pinned to corkboards. I kept copies, Maya said. All of it. Every report they told me to delete. Every transaction they buried. Harper moved closer. Why? Because I knew this day would come. I just didn't know whose side I'd be on. Maya handed Harper a flash drive. This is everything. But be careful. Once you open it, there's no turning back. Harper took it. What did they do to you, Maya? Maya looked away. What they always do. Silenced me. Blackballed me. Threatened my family. I didn't have the power to fight back. Harper clenched her jaw. But I do now. She returned to Margaret's office and loaded the flash drive into a secured laptop. The data was overwhelming. Thousands of files. Ledgers, emails, contracts. Proof of insider trading. Tax evasion. Corporate espionage. Harper stared at the screen. With this, she could take them all down. But once it was out, there would be no controlling the fallout. Stocks would crash. Thousands of employees could lose jobs. The Bellamy name could become radioactive. And Harper? She'd be branded the woman who burned her own legacy to the ground. Margaret's voice broke the silence. You can still walk away. Harper shut the laptop. No. I'm going to court. And I'm going with everything. But before she could stand, Margaret's assistant burst in. There's been an emergency. What kind of emergency? Harper asked, heart pounding. The woman's face was pale. Liam Bellamy just filed a restraining order. He's accusing you of theft, blackmail, and identity fraud. Harper's vision narrowed. They weren't just trying to discredit her. They were trying to erase her, again. The court summons arrived less than 12 hours after Liam Bellamy's filing. Harper stood in her apartment holding the envelope, feeling the weight of a legal system that had never been built for people like her. Inside, 3 typed pages accusing her of impersonating an heir, unlawfully accessing corporate data, and attempting to extort Bellamy International for personal gain. It was a move designed for one purpose: delay. If the court accepted Liam's emergency order, it would halt the will's validation process and block Harper from executing her rights as heir. The codicil would remain in limbo. Control of the company would remain with Liam. And public opinion would be twisted before she could speak. Margaret was furious. This is a classic tactic, she said, tossing the papers on her desk. He's buying time, creating noise, and baiting you into making a mistake. Harper didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on a single phrase near the bottom of the page. The defendant has no DNA proof of relation to the deceased. He's going to make me prove it, she whispered. Margaret nodded grimly. And that gives us our next move. The next day, Harper walked into Genacor, a private genetics firm recommended by Margaret's firm. Clean white walls, biometric scanners, a quiet receptionist who didn't even blink when Harper said her name. The test was quick. Swap. Seal. Submit. But the waiting would take longer. 3 to 5 business days for the DNA match. Harper didn't have 3 to 5 days. So she went to Arthur Brandt. The journalist-turned-investigator had been keeping tabs on the case from the sidelines, reluctant to get involved again after what the Bellamys did to his career. But when Harper called, he picked up. Thought you'd never ask, he said. They met in a parking garage beneath a closed-down hotel in Midtown. Harper handed him a copy of the flash drive Maya had given her. Arthur plugged it into a portable rig, scanning files with a practiced eye. "Holy hell," he muttered. "This isn't just corporate crime. This is federal." He looked at her. "You know, once this leaks, there's no putting it back in the box." "I'm not here to scare them," Harper said. "I'm here to end them." Arthur smiled. "Then I know exactly who to call." The plan took shape fast. Arthur would leak just enough to trigger a financial watchdog alert, forcing the Bellamy board to act. Meanwhile, Margaret would file an emergency injunction requesting immediate court-ordered DNA testing. And Harper? She would go straight to the media. That night, she sat in a downtown studio across from journalist Claire Monroe, one of the few reporters with enough credibility to challenge the Bellamy empire on air. Claire didn't waste time. "Harper Langston, are you the secret daughter of Conrad Bellamy?" "Yes." "Do you have proof?" "Yes." "Why now?" Harper took a breath. "Because silence is what built this empire. And I'm done being silent." The interview aired at 9 p.m. By 9:22, the Bellamy PR team had issued a statement calling Harper an opportunist exploiting grief for personal gain. But by 9:41, Arthur Brandt's leak dropped. And by 10 p.m., 3 government agencies had opened formal inquiries into Bellamy International's financial practices. The next morning, stock in the company dropped 12%. And Harper received a text from a number she didn't recognize. "Meet me. Urgent. I have something you need to see." It was followed by an address. An abandoned office building on the Lower East Side. Margaret told her not to go. Arthur offered to send someone in her place. But Harper had come this far. She arrived just after sunset. The lobby was empty. Dusty. A broken elevator light flickered near the stairwell. She followed the text instructions to the 3rd floor, where a single door was ajar. Inside stood a woman, tall, thin, mid-40s, dressed in all black. She looked up. "I knew your mother," she said. Harper froze. "Who are you?" The woman stepped forward. "My name is Dominique Laurel. I was your father's fixer. Until they turned on me too." Harper's blood ran cold. "You knew about me?" Dominique nodded. "I was the one who smuggled the original codicil out of corporate storage before they could destroy it. And now..." She reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. "I need to show you who else Conrad left behind." Harper's eyes widened. Because in the photo was a child. A girl. With Harper's eyes. Harper stared at the photograph. The girl couldn't have been more than 7. Thick curly hair, hazel eyes wide with curiosity, standing on the steps of what looked like a private boarding school. Clutched in her small hand was a stuffed lion, its mane nearly identical to her own. But it was the jawline, the smile, the slight tilt of the head. It was unmistakable. Harper saw herself. "Who is she?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Dominique folded her arms. "Her name is Juliet. Your sister. Conrad's daughter." Harper blinked. "That's not possible. I thought." "You were the secret," Dominique interrupted. "Juliet was the insurance." Harper sat down, knees suddenly weak. "How long?" 7 years. Different mother. Same story. Except this time he left Juliet under complete anonymity, paid guardians, hidden trusts, off-the-record schooling. He was going to raise her without the Bellamy name. Harper's thoughts raced. Why? Because after what happened with you, he thought shielding her was safer. But the problem is, Dominique hesitated. The Bellamys found out. Harper's stomach dropped. "You're saying Liam knows?" Dominique nodded. "And he's trying to find her. That's why you're in danger. He's not just protecting his legacy. He's trying to erase every threat to it." Harper clutched the photo. "Where is she now?" "I don't know," Dominique admitted. "I was cut out after Conrad died." He moved her again off-grid. "But there's a lead." Dominique handed over a thin envelope. Inside was a copy of a bank transfer, $500,000 wired to a small estate agency in the south of France, just 1 week before Conrad's death. The recipient's name was redacted, but the address was real. "You think she's there?" "I think that's where the trail ends, or begins again." Harper stood, 100 thoughts crashing through her at once. She didn't just have to defend her name, her share of the estate, or even her father's truth anymore. Now she had to protect someone else. A child. A little girl caught in the same web Harper had spent her life trying to cut through. Back in Manhattan, the pressure mounted. The media frenzy exploded after the Brandt leak. Financial analysts called for a freeze on Bellamy International's trading. Employees protested. Board members called emergency meetings. And Liam? He vanished. For 3 days no one saw him. No comment. No tweets. No public appearances. Then, without warning, he re-emerged in a press conference, wearing a dark suit flanked by lawyers. "I have nothing to hide," he said. "But this woman, Harper Langston, is dangerous. She's manipulating the memory of my father and spreading misinformation to destabilize a great company. I will not allow it." When asked about the codicil, "Forgery," he said flatly. When asked about offshore accounts, no comment. But behind the scenes, Harper had filed for an emergency court order. And this time, she had her DNA results. Positive match. Conrad Bellamy was her father. Margaret served the paperwork that same afternoon. The response from the Bellamy legal team came instantly. They'd be counterfiling for defamation, conspiracy, and attempted corporate theft. Margaret shook her head. "They're throwing everything at us." But Harper remained calm. "Good. It means we're winning." Then came the real surprise. A knock at Margaret's office. A courier. Envelope. No return address. Inside, a single flash drive. They loaded it onto the secured laptop. One video file. Footage from inside Bellamy Tower's private boardroom. Dated 3 days before Conrad's death. The camera caught everything. Conrad seated at the head of the table. Eloise pacing, agitated. Liam seated quietly. Then Conrad's voice. "If anything happens to me, Harper inherits. I don't care what it does to the company. It's not about the business anymore. It's about making peace." Eloise protested, her voice rising. "She's not ready." "She's more ready than Liam ever was," Conrad snapped. The room went silent. Then quietly Liam spoke. "Then you're going to destroy everything we built." Conrad looked at him. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally saving it." The screen went black. No signature. No time code. But the audio was clear. Harper looked at Margaret. "Can we use this?" Margaret was already nodding. "Oh yes." But Harper knew this wasn't over. Because if Liam realized the video had surfaced, he wouldn't just attack her in court. He'd come for her personally. And Juliet? She was now more than just a secret. She was a target. By the time Harper left Margaret's office that night, the streets of Manhattan had transformed. Protesters with handmade signs stood outside Bellamy Tower. Reporters lined the sidewalk with microphones and camera crews, chasing anyone wearing a suit. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Social media was ablaze with clips from the leaked boardroom video, now circulating on every major news platform. But Harper's mind wasn't on the chaos outside. It was on the little girl in the photograph. Juliet. The transfer to the agency in France had been verified. Margaret's team located the property, a countryside villa tucked away near Avignon, registered under a shell company traced back to one of Conrad's quiet trusts. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Juliet had been moved there for protection. But Harper didn't know from whom. And after Dominique's warning, she was done leaving anything to chance. The next morning she booked a private flight. Arthur Brandt insisted on going with her. "They've got eyes on you," he said. "You don't need to walk into another trap alone." Harper didn't argue. What she didn't know was that someone else had already beaten her there. Back in New York, Liam Bellamy was unraveling. The boardroom video had triggered a financial earthquake. Shareholders were panicking. 2 executive resignations had already hit the headlines. And whispers about criminal investigations had started leaking into the financial press. Still, Liam refused to back down. "They can't prove anything," he told Eloise. But Eloise looked different now. Hollow-eyed. Calculating. "There's more you don't know," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" She handed him a folder. Inside, a photo of Juliet. Liam's face twisted. "Another one?" "She's a minor," Eloise said. "But if Harper proves the connection, it won't just be her at the table. It'll be both of them. And that means you're out." Liam slammed the folder shut. "So we stop it?" Eloise hesitated. "There's a way. But it's not legal." Liam met her eyes. "Do it." In France, the villa was nestled between rows of olive trees, surrounded by a low stone wall and an iron gate. It looked peaceful. Ordinary. Harper and Arthur arrived late in the afternoon. The air was warm. The birds were loud. A caretaker opened the gate. She recognized Harper immediately. "I was told to expect you," she said in French-accented English. "He said if you ever came to bring you directly." "He?" Harper asked. The caretaker smiled gently. "Your father." Harper followed her inside, past a fountain into a sunlit foyer. On a table sat a sealed box. A note rested on top. "Harper, for Juliet. In time. But first for you." Harper opened it. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All from Conrad. Addressed to Juliet, to Harper, some to both. They told the whole story. He had wanted to come forward years ago, but was blackmailed. By Eloise. By other board members. They had evidence of his early financial misconduct and threatened to destroy the company and Harper's life if he spoke. So he stayed silent. Until his diagnosis. Until he knew he was dying. Then he made a new plan. A slow transfer of assets. Handover instructions to Margaret. A safe house for Juliet. A chain of events designed to protect the daughters he failed to raise, but hoped to redeem. One letter stood out. "Harper, you were my greatest mistake, and my last hope." She read it twice. Then footsteps echoed from the hallway. Harper turned. And there she was. Juliet. Dressed in yellow. Hair wild. Barefoot on the tile. She looked up. "You're her," she said softly. "You're my sister." Harper knelt slowly, her voice catching. "Yes, I'm your sister." The two embraced, awkward and perfect. But the moment was short-lived. Because as Arthur checked his phone, his face went pale. "What is it?" Harper asked. He turned the screen. "Breaking. Interpol investigates possible abduction plot involving Bellamy heiress." And underneath, "Sources say a minor connected to the Bellamy estate may be in immediate danger." Harper looked at Juliet. They weren't safe anymore. Because Liam wasn't going to wait for court. He was coming for Juliet. And this time, he wasn't playing by the rules. They left the villa before dawn. No lights. No noise. No delays. Arthur drove while Harper held Juliet tight in the back seat, the little girl clutching her stuffed lion like it was armor. The air was thick with adrenaline. Harper didn't speak. She couldn't. Not while her heart pounded in time with every passing kilometer. The plan was simple. Get to Marseille, then take a private charter to Geneva. From there, a secured corporate jet, arranged discreetly by Margaret's firm, would fly them back to New York under a sealed passenger manifest. No customs. No press. No interference. But simple plans rarely survive contact with the Bellamy. At the Marseille airstrip, two men in suits were waiting by the hangar. Unmarked car. No official IDs. And the way they stood, wide-legged, hands behind their backs, said they weren't there to welcome anyone. Arthur pulled the car into a side alley and cut the engine. "That's them," he muttered. "Private security. Not government." Harper's grip on Juliet tightened. "What do we do?" Arthur looked at her. "We run." They slipped out the side through a service door in the back of the hangar. A maintenance corridor led to the far end of the tarmac. There an old cargo van, prepped by one of Arthur's contacts, sat with keys taped beneath the bumper. 10 minutes later they were on the highway. Juliet finally spoke. "Are they bad people?" Harper didn't lie. "Yes." "Why?" Harper's voice cracked. "Because they're scared of what you mean." Back in New York, Margaret was mobilizing every contact she had. She filed an emergency motion with the federal court, invoking child endangerment statutes. She submitted evidence of the surveillance Harper had endured. Of Liam's slander. Of Eloise's attempt to suppress the will. But the most powerful piece? A recording sent anonymously the night before. An intercepted phone call. Liam's voice unmistakable. "I don't care what it takes. Get her out of France before they bring her back. If Harper gets custody of that girl, it's over." Margaret played the audio 3 times before submitting it as evidence. It was enough. A judge signed a protective order giving Harper full temporary guardianship over Juliet, with federal protection. But Harper didn't know that yet. She and Arthur crossed the Swiss border under fake names, boarded the jet at a private terminal, and didn't breathe easy until wheels lifted from the tarmac. Juliet slept most of the flight, curled up in Harper's lap. Arthur watched the window. Always scanning. Always ready. When they landed in New York, 3 U.S. Marshals met them at the gate. Margaret was there too. "You're safe now," she told Harper. But Harper knew better. They were safe for the moment. The next morning, the Bellamy Tower boardroom was filled to capacity. Media vans surrounded the building. Protesters lined the street. Whistleblowers from inside the company had come forward, spurred by Arthur's reports and Harper's bravery. A new investigation was underway, and the SEC had launched a full audit. But the biggest blow hadn't landed yet. Margaret held a final piece of evidence. A secret trust document, dated 4 years ago. Signed by Conrad Bellamy. "In the event of my death, guardianship of Juliet Bellamy shall pass to my firstborn child, Harper Langston. I trust her with what I never gave, time, truth, and safety." Eloise tried to contest it. She claimed the signature was forged. Until the forensic team authenticated it, live on record. Liam didn't speak. He just sat there hollow-eyed as everything slipped through his fingers. Control. Influence. Image. Gone. And yet Harper felt no satisfaction. Not yet. Because Juliet was safe. But the system that nearly erased them both still stood. The press clamored for interviews. The public demanded a reckoning. And Harper? She wasn't done. She walked into the boardroom, Juliet waiting in the hallway outside with a federal agent, and stood at the head of the table. Conrad's chair. Her chair now. "I'm not here to be a Bellamy," she began. "I'm here to dismantle what the Bellamys became." She placed a folder on the table. Inside, a list of executives, board members, and partners tied to the crimes uncovered in Maya's files and Arthur's investigations. "Effective immediately," she said. "You're out." One by one names were read. Faces fell. Some shouted. Others wept. And when it was over, Harper turned to the window overlooking Manhattan. "We're going to rebuild this company. From the ground up. For people who were never invited into rooms like this." It was quiet. Until a single board member stood and clapped. Then another. And another. But even as they applauded, Harper felt it. This wasn't the final chapter. Because someone hadn't clapped. Eloise. She stood, straightened her suit, and leaned in close. "This isn't over, Harper. You think you've won, but you've just walked into a bigger cage. And unlike Conrad, I'm not afraid to break the locks." 4 days after the boardroom purge, Bellamy Tower operated under a strange, quiet tension. The old guard had been removed, the press frenzy was beginning to simmer, and Harper officially assumed control as interim chair of the company her father had once ruled like a king. But the silence wasn't peace. It was pressure. From every side. Analysts questioned her experience. Investors threatened to pull out unless she issued public statements. Commentators accused her of being emotional, unqualified, or worse, a placeholder riding a sympathy wave. Harper didn't flinch. She showed up every morning at 7 a.m. Read every file. Attended every meeting. Sat in Conrad's chair, and rewrote his legacy with a pen he never had the courage to use. And in the middle of it all, she protected Juliet. The girl now lived in a secured residence under federal observation, enrolled in private tutoring and reunited occasionally with Harper on weekends. She didn't understand all the chaos, but she understood one thing. Her sister was fighting for her. But while Harper focused on leadership, Eloise disappeared. No public statements. No legal appearances. No trace. Until one morning, Margaret barged into Harper's office holding a printed email, her face pale. "She's making her move." Harper took the page. It was a court filing. Out of state. Filed quietly in Delaware, where Bellamy International's parent companies were headquartered. Eloise Ratcliffe versus Harper Langston. Claiming misappropriation of assets, breach of fiduciary duty, and worst of all, emotional endangerment of a minor. "She's going after custody of Juliet," Margaret said. Harper's hands went cold. "She can't, she has no biological tie, no standing." "She's claiming legal guardianship by proxy," Margaret explained. "That Conrad entrusted her with Juliet's safety before he died." Harper's eyes narrowed. "He also entrusted her with covering up my existence." Margaret nodded. "We're going to court. Again." What Harper didn't know was that Eloise wasn't acting alone. Liam had vanished from headlines but not from the shadows. He had liquidated offshore accounts, shifted assets through ghost firms, and, most importantly, recruited a former Bellamy board member still loyal to the old power structure. Together they had assembled a war chest. And their goal wasn't just to take Juliet. It was to make Harper lose everything. On the morning of the hearing, Harper entered the Delaware courthouse in a dark pantsuit, Juliet's stuffed lion in her bag like a quiet anchor. The courtroom was smaller than the federal buildings she'd grown used to, but the stakes were larger than any case yet. Across the aisle sat Eloise, stoic, pristine, backed by a team of high-powered attorneys. Liam was nowhere in sight. But his fingerprints were on every page of their argument. Eloise's lawyers painted Harper as volatile. A woman with no maternal history. A business novice now in charge of billions. They referenced her media silence as evasive. Her DNA revelation as emotionally manipulative. And worst of all, they introduced photos of Harper being followed, claiming she recklessly endangered Juliet by provoking enemies. But Harper's team came prepared. Maya Knox testified, under oath, about Eloise's suppression of Harper's identity and manipulation of Conrad's mental state. Arthur Brandt presented timelines, financial records, and the chain of custody for every threat Harper had received since the codicil surfaced. And then, Harper took the stand. She spoke with measured clarity. About growing up without a name. About being erased. About finding out she had a sister, and knowing instantly that protecting her mattered more than money or power. Then she opened her bag and pulled out the lion. "This," she said, "is what Juliet took when we ran. Not clothes. Not toys. Not her favorite dress. This." She held it up for the court. "Because she wasn't running from me. She was running with me." The room was still. The judge recessed the hearing. A decision would come within 48 hours. But as Harper left the courthouse, surrounded by press and questions, a security agent approached. "We found something," he said. "In Eloise's recent communications." Harper stopped walking. "What kind of something?" He handed her a folder. Inside, a transcript. Encrypted messages between Eloise and an unnamed third party. "If the judge rules in her favor, we'll go to Plan B. Make sure the girl doesn't arrive at the handover. Use the same team as France." Harper's breath caught. This wasn't just a custody battle. It was a kidnapping plan. And Juliet was in danger, again. Harper's blood ran cold as she stared at the transcript. It wasn't just another legal trick or courtroom bluff. It was proof that Eloise and whoever still backed her was prepared to violate the law, again. Worse, they were preparing to abduct Juliet if the court ruled in Harper's favor. She turned to the federal agent. "Where is Juliet now?" "She's en route to a secure facility outside D.C., he said. "We moved her the moment we decrypted the messages. Standard transport, 2 unmarked vehicles, armed escort." Harper wasn't reassured. "If they know her location." "They don't," he cut in. "We changed the route this morning. But we need you to stay in the city. If something happens and we need confirmation on custody, you'll need to be present." Harper nodded, but her mind was already racing. Plan B wasn't just a theory. It was happening. Somewhere, someone was tracking her sister, waiting for the court's decision to make their move. She couldn't wait 48 hours. She called Arthur. "We need eyes on Juliet's convoy. Quiet ones." Arthur didn't hesitate. "On it." Meanwhile, in a private townhouse 2 blocks from Bellamy Tower, Eloise Radcliffe paced like a chess master trapped in the final seconds of a losing match. Her legal team had done everything right, on paper. But she knew Harper had something money couldn't buy, moral momentum. That made her dangerous. Still, Eloise had leverage. She picked up the phone and dialed a private line. "Proceed with Plan B," she said flatly. "No mistakes." Across the city, in a hotel room rented under a false name, 2 men dressed in security uniforms received the message. They loaded their equipment into a black van and began driving toward a highway exit just outside Washington, D.C., the last stop before Juliet's transport would turn off to the secure facility. Back in New York, Harper received a message from Arthur. "We've intercepted chatter. They're planning a switch at the toll checkpoint near Woodridge exit. 2 SUVs, identical license plates. One real, one fake. Working to reroute now." Harper sent the info to the U.S. Marshals, who confirmed the location. They immediately scrambled their tactical team and changed Juliet's route a second time, taking her through a decoy corridor, one Eloise's men would never expect. But Harper couldn't relax. She sat in her office, hands trembling, staring at Juliet's drawing on her desk, a crayon sketch of two girls holding hands under a rainbow. In the corner, a small heart. H plus J. It wasn't fair. That a child had to become a prize in a war adults created. That her existence had become a liability for people who only cared about legacy and stock prices. Harper stood. She made a decision. If they were going to keep playing dirty, she was going to fight clean. And loud. That evening, Harper requested a live press conference from the steps of Bellamy Tower. She stepped up to the microphones, reporters scrambling into position. "No teleprompter?" one asked. She shook her head. She spoke from the gut. "I'm not here as a CEO, or a shareholder, or a courtroom witness. I'm here as a sister, as a daughter, and as someone who's had everything taken from her, but still stands." She raised the redacted transcripts. "There are people in this city with power and money who would rather kidnap a child than lose their grip on a legacy that was never truly theirs. They tried to erase me. And now they're trying to erase Juliet." Flashes exploded from cameras. "I won't let them. And if something happens to her, every document, every tape, every confession I have, goes public. Immediately. Globally." Gas. Whispers. Live streams caught fire. Then she finished. "And one last thing. For whoever's still listening, your time is up." She turned, walked inside, and didn't look back. The next morning, the court issued its ruling. Harper Langston is hereby granted permanent legal guardianship of Juliet Bellamy, and full uncontested control of all parental and fiduciary decisions related to her care. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Eloise didn't show. But Liam did. He stood at the back, silent, as Harper hugged Margaret and nodded respectfully to the judge. As she exited the courthouse, her phone buzzed. Message from Arthur: "She's safe. Transfer complete. No contact made." Harper exhaled for the first time in days. But as she looked up at the flashing lights, the reporters shouting questions, and the city blinking around her, she knew it wasn't over. Because the final envelope Conrad left behind, hidden within the trust documents, had just arrived at her office. And according to Margaret, it had a single line on the cover. "For Harper's eyes only. When everything else is done." The envelope was heavier than expected. Not in weight but in consequence. Sealed in dark wax with Conrad Bellamy's crest pressed into its surface, it had sat untouched in Margaret's possession since the first day Harper walked into her office. Conrad had left specific instructions. It was to be delivered only after legal custody of Juliet had been secured, and not a moment before. Harper stared at it in her office, alone. The skyline behind her was calm, the storm seemingly over. But something in her gut twisted. She broke the seal. Inside were two documents. The first was a handwritten letter. The final one. "Harper, if you're reading this, it means you did what I couldn't. You protected your sister. You stood for the truth. And for that, I'm sorry. That it had to be you. That I didn't have the strength to do it when it mattered. But there's more. Juliet, she's not just your sister. She's the sole beneficiary of a trust one created outside the company. A trust funded by money the board never knew existed. Money I earned before Bellamy International ever existed. It's clean. And it's hers. But someone else knows. Someone I once trusted. Someone who has been trying to find the access key for over a year. I've hidden that key in a place no one would think to look. A place you'll know instinctively. Because I created it for you. The cabin. The one near Black Pine Lake. The one where I taught you to fish when you were 5. You probably thought that was a dream. It wasn't. The truth is there. And once you find it, use it to protect Juliet. No matter what. Love always. Dad. Harper set the letter down, her heart hammering. She remembered the cabin. A distant memory. Trees. A dock. A silver tackle box. A fire pit. The song. She was 5. Her mother had called it a vacation. But now she knew it had been more than that. It had been the only time her father truly tried. The second document was a map. Hand-drawn. Precise. Coordinates to a property still listed under a dummy corporation. Untouched. Unvisited in over 15 years. Margaret confirmed the location. The title was buried under layers of trusts. But legally Harper had full access. That night she flew out alone. No press. No Arthur. No legal team. Just herself. And the past. The cabin was as she remembered. Smaller, older but intact. A quiet pocket of land surrounded by pines and silence. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and dust. Toys still in a box. A Polaroid of a young Harper pinned to a corkboard. Her father's handwriting on a recipe taped to the fridge. She searched for hours. Nothing. Until she checked under the floorboards near the fireplace. There it was. A steel box. Locked. With a simple note taped to the top. Your name opened the door. Your blood opens the vault. Inside, a biometric reader. Portable. Preloaded with access protocols. And a single button marked Confirm. Harper pressed her thumb. The screen flashed green. Access granted. What followed was staggering. A secondary trust account. Off-grid. Untied to Bellamy International. $318 million. Designated solely for Juliette Bellamy. No one else had access. No board. No challenge. No LOEs. And with it, a final video file. Dated 2 days before Conrad's death. She played it. If you're watching this, you've done it. I don't know how. But I know who you are. I built an empire out of fear, out of lies. I buried the people who should have mattered most. I can't undo it. But maybe you can build something better. Not a legacy. A future. For her. For you. For the name I never gave you but should have. I'm sorry, Harper Bellamy. I love you. Harper sat in silence. No tears. Just breath. A full breath for the first time in years. 2 weeks later, Harper made her final move. She sold her remaining shares in Bellamy International. Donated half of the trust to create a foundation for children lost in legal limbo. And took Juliette away from the city, to a life without cameras, without lawyers, without ghosts. One day she'd tell her everything. For now they fished. On a quiet lake. At a cabin no one else knew. And when Juliette asked about the man in the photo on the nightstand, Harper smiled. And said, "That was our dad."